that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior.
Trevor Noah thought he was in for another witty exchange, but Karoline Leavitt had other plans. In a moment that no one saw coming, she flipped the script and left the former Daily Show host completely speechless. Now the internet is in a frenzy. Memes are flying and Leavitt is soaking up the spotlight. Let's just say Trevor won't be forgetting this one anytime soon. The epic showdown that set the internet ablaze. Everyone's now talking about the moment. 27-year-old White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, the youngest person to ever hold this position, found herself squaring off against comedian Trevor Noah in what can only be described as one of the most brutal public roastings we've seen in 2025. But here's where it gets interesting. The person who walked away looking like they'd been put through the political wood chipper wasn't who most people expected. Now, before we break down this absolute train wreck of an encounter, let's talk about who these players are. Karoline Leavitt isn't just any White House press secretary. At just 27 years old, she's made history as the youngest person to ever step into this high-pressure role. A staunch defender of Trump's policies and known for her no-nonsense approach to handling the media, Leavitt has quickly established herself as someone who doesn't back down, even when facing off against a comedy heavyweight. On the other side of this showdown, we have Trevor Noah, the South African comedian who hosted The Daily Show from 2015 to 2022 and has built his brand on sharp political commentary that doesn't pull punches. Noah's known for his ability to dismantle political figures with his particular brand of witty, incisive humor. He's gone toe-to-toe with some of the biggest names in politics and usually emerges with his target left searching for words. But that's not what happened this time, folks. Not even close. This explosive confrontation took place on April 10th, 2025, during Noah's appearance on the talk show The Pulse, where what started as a comedy routine quickly spiraled into something much more intense. What began as Trevor Noah doing his usual comedic takedown suddenly turned into something no one, especially Noah, expected. A masterclass in political counterpunching from Leavitt that left the comedian visibly rattled. Let's break down exactly what went down, because this wasn't just any ordinary TV spat. This was a meticulously executed verbal chess match that ended with one player's king toppled over, and spoiler alert, it wasn't Leavitt's. Noah kicked things off with what he clearly thought would be an easy target, former First Lady Melania Trump. I mean, making jokes about the Trumps has been the bread and butter of late-night comedy for years, right? But what Noah didn't realize was that he was walking straight into a trap that would leave him wishing he'd stuck to safer material. Noah didn't just stop there either. He went on to claim that Melania looked at Trump like she wanted to run, appearing publicly with him less than 200 times from 2017 to 2021. He joked that Melania smiled in public only 12 times in photos during Trump's first term and has a divorce draft ready. The audience was eating it up, laughing along as Noah referred to Trump as the self-appointed warden with the worst wig. But here's where things took a dramatic turn that nobody, especially Trevor Noah, saw coming. Enter Karoline Leavitt, stone-faced and armed with what can only be described as a verbal bazooka. Where Noah brought jokes, Leavitt brought cold, hard facts that cut through the comedian's routine like a hot knife through butter. And folks, let me tell you, what happened next was nothing short of a complete demolition. Leavitt, without even cracking a smile, systematically dismantled Noah's entire comedy routine with a series of facts that left the audience's laughter dying in their throats. It was like watching someone bring a calculator to a roast battle and somehow winning. The audience, who had been laughing along with Noah just moments before, suddenly fell silent as Leavitt continued her methodical takedown. She wasn't just defending Melania, she was turning Noah's comedy routine into a fact-checking session that the comedian clearly hadn't prepared for. But Leavitt wasn't finished, not by a long shot. She went straight for the jugular, calling Noah out as a failed comedian hiding behind stale jokes and a clown with no truth, just noise. I mean, talk about bringing a nuclear weapon to a knife fight. The white-hot intensity of this comeback left Noah visibly rattled, and that's when things really started to unravel for the comedian. What happened next was the kind of meltdown you'd expect to see in a reality TV show, not from a professional comedian with years of experience handling hecklers and critics. Noah, clearly thrown off his game by Leavitt's unexpected counterattack, resorted to calling her kid, a dismissive term that only highlighted his growing frustration. And then came the moment that sent social media into absolute overdrive. Trevor Noah, the man known for his cool demeanor and quick wit, completely lost it. He slammed down his microphone and stormed off the stage, leaving Leavitt standing there, composed and victorious, in front of an audience that had just witnessed one of the most shocking public meltdowns in recent memory. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. On one side, you had Noah, a seasoned comedian known for his ability to stay cool under pressure, storming off like he'd just lost his favorite toy. On the other, Leavitt remained perfectly composed, the very picture of professional poise, having just defended the former First Lady with a barrage of facts that Noah Noah clearly wasn't prepared to counter. This wasn't just a verbal sparring match. It was a complete and utter humiliation on national television. And the internet, as you might expect, absolutely lost its collective mind. Within minutes of the confrontation, social media platforms erupted with reactions. Comments that had once been supportive quickly turned against him, with viewers expressing disappointment and even mockery of the comedian's inability to handle being fact-checked. Meanwhile, Leavitt's social media presence exploded, with her follower count skyrocketing as clips of her calm, fact-based response went viral. It was like watching a real-time demonstration of the saying, "Facts don't care about your feelings." Except in this case, it was the comedian's feelings that took the hardest hit. What makes this confrontation particularly fascinating is how it upended the expected dynamic. Comedians like Noah are usually the ones leaving politicians scrambling for responses, not the other way around. But in this case, the roles were dramatically reversed. Leavitt, armed with facts and a cool demeanor, managed to do what many politicians have failed to do when faced, with comedic criticism. She didn't get defensive, she didn't lose her temper, and she certainly didn't try to match Noah joke for joke. Instead, she brought a completely different weapon to the fight: cold, hard facts, and it proved devastatingly effective. As we move into the next segment, we'll dive deeper into how the media covered this explosive confrontation, the broader implications for political discourse in the age of social media, and why this particular showdown has struck such a nerve with audiences across the political spectrum. Because make no mistake, this wasn't just a momentary clash between a press secretary and a comedian. This was a cultural moment that perfectly encapsulates the current state of political discourse in America, and the reverberations are still being felt days later. Stay tuned, because we're just getting started unpacking this absolute doozy of a political showdown that has left everyone from media analysts to casual observers asking the same question: did we just witness the most epic takedown in recent political memory? I think we might have, folks. I think we might have. The media meltdown and public reaction. Let me tell you, folks, if you thought the initial confrontation between Karoline Leavitt and Trevor Noah was explosive, the aftermath has been nothing short of nuclear. We're talking about a media firestorm that's been raging for days, with reactions pouring in from every corner of the internet, news outlets scrambling to frame the narrative, and public figures from both sides of the political aisle weighing in on what might be the most unexpected political smackdown of 2025. The media coverage of this event has been absolutely fascinating to watch unfold. It's like witnessing a real-time battle for narrative control, with different outlets interpreting the same event in wildly different ways depending on their political leanings. But here's the thing, even traditionally left-leaning outlets couldn't completely spin this in Noah's favor. CNN and Fox News actually found themselves in rare agreement, with headlines praising Leavitt as a silent hero who crushed rock with truth. That's right, CNN, not exactly known for its favorable coverage of Trump administration officials, couldn't ignore the fact that Leavitt had objectively dominated the exchange. When CNN and Fox News are on the same page, you know something truly exceptional has happened. But it wasn't just the major news networks that were buzzing about this confrontation. Social media platforms became virtual battlegrounds, with users dissecting every second of the exchange, creating memes, and declaring winners and losers. The hashtag #RockVasLeavitt, yes, they misspelled her name, but that's the internet for you, trended for days, with memes showing Noah losing and Leavitt emerging victorious with her fact-based approach. What's particularly interesting about the public reaction is how it evolved over time. Initially, there was shock. After all, Noah has built his career on these kinds of political takedowns, and seeing him on the receiving end was unexpected, to say the least. But as clips of the exchange continued to circulate and people had time to process what they'd witnessed, the consensus became increasingly clear. Leavitt had absolutely crushed it. Even among viewers who might typically align themselves with Noah's political perspective, there was a grudging acknowledgement that Leavitt's approach had been devastatingly effective. She didn't try to match Noah joke for joke, a battle she likely would have lost, given his comedic experience. Instead, she changed the rules of engagement entirely, bringing facts to a comedy fight and leaving Noah visibly rattled. The audience reaction in the studio itself tells its own fascinating story. At the beginning of Noah's routine, the crowd was eating out of his hand, laughing along as he made his jokes about Melania Trump. But the atmosphere shifted dramatically as Leavitt spoke, with the applause growing louder for her, especially after her final statements. By the end, the crowd's support had turned decisively in her favor, with audible gasps and then applause when Noah stormed off stage. What's fascinating about this entire episode is how it challenges our expectations about public discourse. We're used to seeing politicians struggle when confronted by comedians. Think of Sarah Palin's infamous encounters with Tina Fey's impersonations, or how politicians often seem stiff and uncomfortable when appearing on late-night shows. But Leavitt flipped the script entirely, demonstrating that a well-prepared, fact-based response can be more powerful than even the most cutting joke. This isn't just about a political aide getting the better of a comedian. comedian. It's about the changing nature of public discourse in America. In an era where dunking on political opponents has become a sport, Leavitt's approach, calm, factual, and refusing to be baited into emotional responses, proved remarkably effective. It suggests that perhaps the antidote to satirical takedowns isn't more jokes or defensiveness, but simply sticking to verifiable facts. Now, let's talk about the title of this controversy and how it relates to what actually happened. The title, You Lost, Chris Rock Shreds. Karoline Leavitt. On stage and brutal roast is making the rounds, but the evidence we've gathered contradicts this framing entirely. In fact, it appears to be a complete misrepresentation of the event. First, the phrase, You Lost, doesn't appear in any direct quotes from the event, suggesting the title may be a creative or misleading summary. Second, the public and media reaction overwhelmingly favored Leavitt, not Noah. And third, the visual evidence, Noah storming off stage while Leavitt remained composed, tells its own story about who really lost this exchange. But here's where things get even more interesting. Trevor Noah actually has a history of these kinds of controversial moments. As far back as 2013, Noah found himself in hot water for an X post about Paralympic sprinter Oscar Pistorius, where he wrote, "And the Oscar goes to jail," shortly after news broke that Pistorius had been arrested for the murder of his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. The post was met with immediate backlash from fans and celebrities in South Africa, with critics calling the remark insensitive and arguing that it trivialized a tragic event. Sound familiar? It's a pattern we're seeing repeat itself now, with Noah making light of serious situations and facing public backlash as a result. Then there was the 2018 controversy when, following France's victory in the World Cup, Noah commented on The Daily Show, "I get it, they have to say it's the French team. But look at those guys. You don't get that tan by hanging out in the south of France, my friends. Basically, if you don't understand, France is Africa's backup team." This led to the French ambassador to the United States issuing a letter condemning Noah's comment. These incidents paint a picture of a comedian who, while undeniably talented, sometimes crosses lines that audiences find problematic. And in this latest confrontation with Leavitt, it seems he misjudged not just his audience's reaction, but also his opponent's ability to counter his routine with facts. What's particularly revealing about this whole saga is how it highlights the contrast between comedy and factual discourse. Comedy often relies on exaggeration, stereotypes, and simplifications to get laughs, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But when those comedic devices are applied to real people and situations, they can sometimes misrepresent reality in ways that a fact-based response can easily dismantle. That's exactly what happened here. Noah's jokes about Melania Trump relied on exaggerated stereotypes about her marriage and relationship with Donald Trump. When confronted with factual information about Melania's actual activities as First Lady hosting charity events, meeting world leaders, representing America on international trips, the comedic narrative simply couldn't stand up to scrutiny. This isn't to say that political comedy doesn't have its place, of course it does. But this confrontation serves as a powerful reminder that comedy is not immune to fact-checking, and that sometimes the most effective response to a joke isn't another joke, but simply the truth. As we've seen from the public reaction, audiences responded strongly to Leavitt's approach. In an era where political discourse often feels divorced from factual reality, her no-nonsense, fact-based response struck a chord with viewers across the political spectrum. It wasn't just that she defended Melania Trump effectively, it was that she did so by appealing to verifiable facts rather than emotion or counterattacks. And that brings us to perhaps the most important takeaway from this whole saga: the power of staying composed under pressure. In a political landscape where heated exchanges and emotional outbursts have become almost expected, Leavitt's composed demeanor stood out as remarkably professional. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful position in a confrontation is one of calm confidence rather than reactive emotion. As we move into the final segment of our analysis, we'll explore the broader implications of this confrontation for political discourse, comedy, and public figures. We'll also look at what this means for both Leavitt and Noah going forward, and why this particular exchange has resonated so strongly with audiences. Because make no mistake, what we witnessed wasn't just a momentary clash between a press secretary and a comedian. It was a moment that perfectly encapsulates the current state of political communication in America, and the lessons it offers are valuable for anyone interested in effective public discourse. Stay tuned, because we're about to dive into why this confrontation matters beyond just the viral clips and hashtags, and what it tells us about the future of political communication in an increasingly polarized media landscape. Why this matters and what happens next. All right, folks, we've witnessed the epic showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Trevor Noah. We've analyzed the explosive aftermath and public reaction, and now it's time to zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Because this isn't just about a press secretary owning a comedian on national television, although that was undeniably entertaining. This is about something much bigger that's happening in our political discourse, and the implications reach far beyond this single viral moment.